In the quiet rural town of Holston Creek, Mississippi, where oak trees swayed and time moved slowly, lived a humble couple, Jamal and Isla Foster. They had been married for over 10 years, and in all those years they longed for one thing: a child. Despite their modest income, Jamal working long days in construction and Isla sewing clothes from home, their faith in God remained unbroken. Every night after prayer, Jamal would cup his hands and whisper into the silence of their small home, "O Lord, bless us with a child. Let my wife's arms not remain empty." But the silence remained. Neighbors began to murmur, 10 years and no baby? Maybe she's cursed. Others questioned Isla's worth as a woman. Still, Isla never let bitterness take root. She cried alone sometimes, but never questioned her creator. One sultry afternoon, as the sun filtered through the magnolia leaves in their backyard, Isla looked up at the sky and whispered, "If motherhood is written for me, I will wait for it. I trust your mercy." That same week, a stranger knocked at her door. An elderly man with silvery eyes and a calm smile. He spoke just one line, "Your child is coming, be ready." Then he turned and walked away. The strange encounter remained etched in Isla's heart. She didn't know what to make of it, but she felt peace. Weeks passed, then months. Life went on as usual, helping the elderly, feeding the hungry, giving even when they barely had enough. Then one night, Isla collapsed with a fever. Jamal, frantic, drove her through a summer storm to the county hospital. It was a place mostly frequented by conservative Christians. Few Muslims were ever seen there. But Jamal didn't care. His wife needed help. After tests, the doctor emerged stunned. "Mr. Foster, congratulations, your wife is pregnant." Jamal's legs nearly gave way. Tears streamed down Isla's face. Their prayers had been answered. News spread through the neighborhood. Some rejoiced. Others whispered, "Let's see if the baby survives." But Isla remained silent. Her faith was louder than their doubts. In her growing belly, she felt something divine. She and Jamal would walk near the old church gardens in town, heads high, hearts light. One day, an older Christian woman, Martha James, gently held Isla's shoulder. "You're strong, sweetheart. God is with you." And in that moment, walls began to crumble, not just within the town, but within people's hearts. As the 9th month approached, Jamal worked double shifts, borrowing money, scraping every penny for hospital bills. Then one night, Isla's water broke. Jamal helped her into their old pickup, his hands trembling, rain beating down on the windshield as he whispered, "God, please, not now, not like this." At the hospital, doctors discovered the baby was in breach. Emergency C-section was the only option. Jamal waited outside, gripping his prayer beads, eyes locked on the ICU doors. The clock ticked past 2 a.m. when something strange happened. Instead of a baby's cry, the hall echoed with a sound, soft, melodic, ancient. "Allahu Akbar." A nurse burst out, pale-faced. "Mr. Foster, come inside." Quietly. Jamal rushed in, heart pounding. Isla lay unconscious from surgery. In the pediatrician's arms was their baby boy, tiny, pink, eyes barely open, but lips moving. Allahu Akbar. Everyone in the room froze. The nurses stepped back in awe. Even Nurse Kafi, an older Christian nurse, whispered, "What is this child?" The doctor turned to Jamal. "He's physically perfect, but this sound, it's not crying, it's a chant." Jamal took his son into his arms, trembling. Was this real? Isla stirred awake. "Is he okay?" Jamal nodded through tears. "He didn't cry, Isla. He gave the adhan." Tears streamed down her face. "Ya Allah, you heard us." By sunrise, the entire hospital knew. A baby born in Mississippi reciting the Muslim call to prayer. Some called it a miracle, others said it was fake, but deep down, everyone felt something. The town's local Baptist pastor, Reverend Gregory Hill, came to see the child. He leaned over the crib and said quietly, "If this is real, then it's not just a miracle for Muslims. It's a sign for all of us." 2 days later, Isla was discharged. When Jamal went to pay the hospital bill, the receptionist smiled. "It's already been paid," she said, "by Mr. Andrew Shaw." Andrew Shaw, the same wealthy white businessman who once refused to shake his hand? Jamal could hardly speak. Something was changing in Holston Creek. But the story was only beginning. The days following baby Hassan's birth were like a wave of awakening in Holston Creek. Jamal and Isla returned home with their newborn son, choosing the name Hassan, which means the one who brings beauty and goodness. They lived simply, keeping away from the flood of curiosity and media attention. Jamal refused interviews, Isla turned down reporters. They said, "He is not a sign for sale, he is a gift from God." But the people came anyway. Neighbors who once whispered behind closed doors now arrived with blankets and baby clothes. Even Christian women who used to avoid eye contact with Isla came forward with casseroles and prayer cards. People wanted to see the baby, hear the sound, feel the peace. And yet, Hassan never repeated the adhan like he had at birth. He was just a quiet baby, peaceful, observant, serene. He didn't cry much, he didn't fuss, but whenever the call to prayer echoed from the small-town mosque, Hassan would lift his tiny head and gaze toward the sound, still, focused, like he understood. By his first birthday, Hassan had begun to walk. By 2, he could speak simple words. But his voice, soft, musical, echoing, seemed to pull at the hearts of everyone who heard him. There was no arrogance in him, no drama, just calm, and people felt it. Word spread beyond Holston Creek. Visitors from neighboring towns came, not to gawk, but to witness. Some came in search of faith, others out of wonder. One Friday, leaders from the town's Jewish and Christian communities came to the mosque, not for interfaith debates, but simply to meet the boy. After hearing Hassan repeat a verse of the Quran in a voice barely above a whisper, Rabbi Goldstein said, "Sometimes God doesn't speak in thunder. Sometimes he speaks in innocence." The moment was sacred. But not everyone embraced the change. Curtis Benson, a hardware store owner known for his prejudice, began stirring trouble. "They're using this kid for fame," he barked. "Probably got a speaker under the blanket." He even spread rumors that the Fosters were taking secret donations and plotting to change the town's traditions. But his voice was no longer as loud as it used to be, because something else was happening. His own 10-year-old son, Mark, started asking questions. "Dad," he said one night, "if that boy is fake, why do people feel happier around him?" Curtis had no answer. At school, children who once teased Isla for her headscarf now waved and said hello. Elderly Christian churchgoers stopped by the mosque asking about fasting, not to convert, but to understand. The town's multicultural fair, once divided by faiths, became a festival of unity. Muslim and Christian booths stood side by side. Jamal served spicy lamb stew beside a church member handing out gospel CDs. And all the while, Hassan, quiet, small, mysterious, became a symbol of harmony. Then came the Fall Festival, a town tradition mostly centered around Christian themes. This year, for the first time, it was open to all. Jamal was hesitant, but Isla smiled and said, "Let's go. Let love walk where walls once stood." They packed into their old pickup, Jamila, Isla, and little Hassan. The festival was alive with color, painted pumpkins, gospel music, cinnamon pies, and children laughing. People paused when they saw Jamal and Isla walking in with Hassan, but instead of glares, they offered smiles. Andrew Shaw even came over and kissed Hassan's forehead. He said, "I'm just here for my blessing," laughing. But not everyone was joyful. In the corner near the cider stand, Curtis Benson was fuming. "That kid's not Jesus," he muttered, "and you all act like he's divine." A vendor pointed toward Jamal walking by. Curtis, red with rage, stomped toward him. "What kind of game are you playing, Foster? Trying to brainwash the town?" People froze. Tension buzzed in the air. But before Jamal could speak, Hassan, now 3 years old, turned his head slowly from Isla's arms and raised one hand gently. Then, in the soft voice that seemed to silence the wind itself, he whispered, "Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah." The crowd stood still. Even Curtis froze, his mouth hanging open, eyes wide. His anger seemed to fall away like a coat in the wind. He said nothing. He just turned and walked away. Then Reverend Gregory Hill, the local pastor, stepped forward and said quietly, "Curtis, maybe it's time to listen." That night, as stars lit the Mississippi sky, Jamal stood outside, staring at the heavens. Inside, Isla rocked Hassan to sleep. Jamal whispered, "God, what is your plan with our son?" From the window, Isla's voice came softly. "Whatever it is, it's already unfolding." Holston Creek slept soundly that night, and in the hush of dawn, it felt as if every heart had grown just a little softer. As the seasons quietly passed in Holston Creek, little Hassan grew, not only in size, but in spirit. By the time he turned 5, he was no longer seen as a mystical miracle. He was simply Hassan, a child people loved, respected, and instinctively gravitated toward. He never sought attention, yet when he entered a room, the air seemed to shift. Conversations softened, people smiled more. Teachers at his interfaith kindergarten often described him in notes home as a boy who doesn't just listen, he hears. Even visitors unfamiliar with his story felt something inexplicable, a sense of calm, a subtle pull toward peace. But not everyone embraced it. Curtis Benson, now losing influence in town and struggling to keep his hardware business afloat, grew darker in his bitterness. "He's made people weak," he would say. "They've forgotten their roots, forgotten who they are." Then, on a chilly morning in October, Hassan fell ill. It began with a low fever, nothing unusual, but by the next evening he was listless. His body weak, his voice a faint echo of his usual calm. Jamal and Isla grew terrified. They took him to the hospital. Tests were run, IVs were placed, machines beeped. But nothing made sense. The doctors found no virus, no infection, no known cause, just a small boy slowly growing weaker. By the third night, Hassan was in intensive care, surrounded by monitors, wires, and a team of specialists. And outside the hospital, something remarkable began. The people of Holston Creek, Muslims, Christians, Jews, and even non-believers, gathered in prayer. The local mosque held vigils. Church bells rang not for Sunday, but for solidarity. Jewish families lit candles on their porches. Children from Hassan's class stood outside with signs that read, "We love you, Hassan." Even Curtis Benson came, standing silently in the corner of the parking lot, away from the crowd. His eyes, once filled with anger, now reflected something else, something uncertain, something human. Inside the hospital, Jamal and Isla never left their son's side. Jamal held his hand, Isla stroked his hair and whispered prayers into his ear. Then, in the quiet hours of the fourth night, something happened. Hassan's eyes fluttered open, his lips moved. Isla leaned in close. In the faintest voice, barely above a breath, he whispered, "La ilaha illallah." There is no God but God. Then, silence. The heart monitor flatlined. The doctor turned, tears in his eyes. He said, I'm so sorry." Isla collapsed into Jamal's arms. Nurses wept. Even the lead surgeon, a Christian man who'd once doubted everything, crossed himself and whispered, "God forgive us." Word spread quickly. Hassan was gone. The town mourned like it had lost its own son. The funeral, his janazah, was like nothing Mississippi had ever seen. People from all backgrounds came. There were no sides, no arguments, just unity. Jamal, Reverend Gregory, Rabbi Goldstein, and even Curtis Benson carried the small